for birthday parties, field trips, and daily sensory play. Their web address is www.hippoplaySpace.com, and their phone number is 847-201-1120. Hippo Campus, where sense memories are made.
Welcome to the Dave Mierswa Show, the cutting-edge talk show about legal, political, and current issues. Practicing in both Wisconsin and Illinois, David Mierswa is a leading trial attorney bringing nearly 2 decades of business law, family law, personal injury, and estate planning experience to you. The Dave Mierswa Show, about the people, for the people, and bringing justice to the people. The Dave Mierswa Show, its guests, agents, and WRLR are not rendering any legal advice. All listeners are encouraged to seek legal advice from properly licensed and qualified professionals.
Welcome back to the Dave Mierswa Show. We just got done with a break here, and I got to say that it's pretty cool. Right next door to WRLR Studios, they had a Easter egg hunt, and I just talked to some of the staff here at WRLR that helped out. So pretty cool. They had the egg hunt and all that for the kids. So that's pretty cool, giving back to the community here. So just before break, I was going to talk about Merrick Garland. He is the Supreme Court nominee that Obama appointed this last week. And I want to kind of give a little bit of a background. Being a lawyer, I feel a certain kinship to the judicial system and the lawyers, and in particular the judges. And the Supreme Court judges really are a third and fourth branch to the government, because they are where the buck stops when you have legal questions where the legislator didn't clearly promulgate the law, and there's always going to be legal questions and as to what group applies to the law, does the law apply at all, and so forth. And at the end of the day, the Supreme Court has the final say on any political, legal, or social issue that's out there that two people are disputing about, or two parties are disputing about. And it is so important as to what the Supreme Court will decide in their opinions. And this could shape the court for the next 30, 40 years. And I know a lot of the conservatives are just scrambling right now because Judge Scalia, who was one of the most conservative justices on the Supreme Court, died not too long ago. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding him. I know President Obama showed up to contribute to him, but didn't go to his funeral. And also, Nancy Reagan's funeral, Obama didn't attend that. He sent his wife, Michelle. So, I thought that was a little not too classy to show up to, I understand about Nancy Reagan not going to that, but not to show up to the funeral of Justice Scalia. Really didn't fly in the face in respect to the Supreme Court. So I'm not trying to have one side or another, Republican or Democratic, into that issue, but he should have showed up to Scalia's funeral just because he was the Supreme Court justice. But going back to Merrick Garland, who was born November 13th, 1952. He is the Supreme Court nominee justice that Obama wants to have Senate confirm in the Supreme Court. And if you are not aware, the Senate advises and they affirm any appointee that the president makes. And Garland was born again in Chicago. Isn't this interesting? Garland was born November 13, 1952 in Chicago. He was raised in Lincolnwood, which is not too far from here. Also, he graduated from Niles West High School in Skokie and was valedictorian of his high school class. Later, he went on to achieve an undergrad from Harvard College on a scholarship. And he graduated summa cum laude, which I believe is valedictorian. I believe that's the highest you can graduate. and he graduated from Harvard College in 1974. He went on to attend Harvard Law School, graduating with his JD. A lot of you listeners are wondering, what does JD stand for? A lot of attorneys always put it behind their name. That stands for Juris Doctorial. JD, Juris Doctorial. In other words, it's a PhD in the law. And Merrick graduated magna cum laude, which is not the top, but that is still pretty good. He graduated from law school in 1977. He was a member of the Harvard Law Review. For those of you that have not entered the world of law, one of the biggest honors that a law student can get is writing on the law review of that school. So that is a pretty big accomplishment right there. And this Merrick Garland clerked for, looks like it was Judge, let me see here. Yeah, Judge Friendly on the U.S. Supreme Court or U.S. Court of Appeals in 1977 and 1978. And he then went on for Brennan. So that was his inkling into the Supreme Court. Interesting that Mr. Garland was a partner at a law firm in D.C. called Arnold and Porter. And I believe they're still there, if I'm not mistaken. And he became a partner there. And then in 1989, Mr. Garland, who wasn't a justice yet, in 1989, he became an appointee to the Assistant U.S. State's Attorney's Office. And this is real interesting. I heard this on the news, and on my research here, I got to give hats off to Garland. He prosecuted, as being the U.S. Attorney General's office, he prosecuted the Oklahoma City bombing prosecutions and also the Atlanta Olympic bombings. So that's a pretty big role. And if you remember, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols were involved in the Oklahoma City bombing. And Garland was one of the lead attorneys on the government side to prosecute them. So that's a pretty huge milestone, being a U.S. attorney. And then on September 6th in 1995, Bill Clinton appointed Garland to the D.C. Circuit Court. So interesting there. And Judge Garland's rulings have affected quite a few decisions out of the D.C. Circuit. So that is a very interesting history. And I know since President Obama is going to try to have him appointed to the Supreme Court, that I know a lot of big Second Amendment holders say that the Judge Garland is an anti-Second Amendment. And it's kind of interesting because Garland takes a strict view on a lot of the conservative issues and also on the Constitution. He has a strict definition, and he has a tendency of siding with strict interpretation of the Constitution. So it is not exactly clear if Judge Garland is anti-Second Amendment, although a lot of Second Amendment opponents do like this judge. So let me get into the audio clip of President Obama appointing, or trying to have appointing, of Garland to the Supreme Court. Let's hear what President Obama has to say.
American people, this fall, he is the right man for the job. He deserves to be confirmed. I could not be prouder of the work that he has already done on behalf of the American people. He deserves our thanks, and he deserves a fair hearing. And with that, I'd like to invite Judge Garland to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the greatest honor of my life, other than Lynn agreeing to marry me 28 years ago. It's also the greatest gift I've ever received, except, and there's another caveat, the birth of our daughters, Jessie and Becky. As my parents taught me, by both words and deeds, a life of public service is as much a gift to the person who serves as it is to those he is serving. And for me, there could be no higher public service than serving as a member of the United States Supreme Court. My family deserves much of the credit for the path that led me here. My grandparents left the Pale of Settlement at the border of Western Russia and Eastern Europe in the early 1900s, fleeing anti-Semitism and hoping to make a better life for their children in America. They settled in the Midwest, eventually making their way to Chicago. There, my father, who ran the smallest of small businesses from a room in our basement, took me with him as he made the rounds to his customers, always impressing upon me the importance of hard work and fair dealing. There, my mother headed the local PTA and school board and directed a volunteer services agency, all the while instilling in my sisters and me the understanding that service to the community is a responsibility above all others. Even now, my sisters honor that example by serving the children of their communities. I know that my mother is watching this on television and crying her eyes out. So are my sisters, who have supported me in every step I have ever taken. I only wish that my father were here to see this today. I also wish that we hadn't taught my older daughter to be so adventurous that she would be hiking in the mountains out of cell service range when the president called.
Okay, that's just part of the audio clip. I am short on time here. I got about 5-6 minutes left in the show. And this hour, you know, you have real life out there, then you have studio time in here in WRLR, and the hour just flies by. So I wanted to play Mitch McConnell's response to the appointment of Judge Garland to the Supreme Court. Let's hear what Mitch McConnell has to say.
Mr. President, Majority Leader, I'm going to proceed on my leader time.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the next justice could fundamentally alter the direction of the Supreme Court and have a profound impact on our country. So, of course, the American people should have a say in the court's direction. It is the President's constitutional right to nominate a Supreme Court justice, and it is the Senate's constitutional right to act as a check on a president and withhold its consent. As Chairman Grassley and I declared weeks ago and reiterated personally to President Obama, the Senate will continue to observe the Biden rule so that the American people have a voice in this momentous decision. The American people may well elect a president who decides to nominate Judge Garland for Senate consideration. The next president may also nominate somebody very different. Either way, our view is this: give the people a voice in filling this vacancy. Let me remind colleagues of what Vice President Biden said when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee here in the Senate. Here's what he said: it would be our pragmatic conclusion that once the political season is underway, and it is, action on a Supreme Court nomination must be put off until after the election campaign is over. That is what is fair to the nominee, he said, and is central to the process. Otherwise, it seems to me, Chairman Biden went on, we will be in deep trouble as an institution. Others may fret, he said, that this approach would leave the court with only 8 members for some time. But as I see it, Chairman Biden said, the cost of such a result, the need to re-argue 3 or 4 cases that will divide the justice 4-4, are quite minor compared to the cost that a nominee, the president, the Senate, and the nation would have to pay for what would assuredly be a bitter fight, no matter how good a person is nominated.
Okay, that was Mitch McConnell, and he was basically quoting the Biden rule, which says that basically the Senate has the power and the absolute power to advise and to consent to the nomination by the President of the United States. And way back when, Biden and also President Obama were against some conservative justices being appointed. So McConnell pointed out that the Biden rule, that the very thing that President Obama and Biden are complaining about, they enacted years ago. So whichever side the coin is, that's how our politicians work. So if it's not in their favor, they cry over that. If it's against them, they cry over that. So I got mixed feelings about the Senate not giving a hearing, although it's within their power. I believe that the Supreme Court would be better served having a full 9 members on its panel. But again, I also understand the argument that you want the electorate to be able to pick their appointee after the elections in November. So I kind of understand both sides of the coin here. So I got mixed feelings on it. Either way, I believe some of the senators out there are buckling on what Mitch McConnell has drawn a line in the sand. I know Mark Kirk, who is up for re-election here in Illinois, said that it ought to go to a full hearing. So, of course, he's up for re-election, and that's why he broke ranks with the Republicans, which is fine. So I got about a minute and a half left in my show here. And, I got to say, I always try to bring the best information to you listeners out there, you friends and the listeners and the family at WRLR here. And it is so important to promote WRLR. We do have a free app. So if you got a smartphone, you can put in the search and put in WRLR radio or WRLR FM. There is a free app that you can listen to on your phone. So that is so important. So wherever you're at, you're able to tune in to all of these great shows here at WRLR. So if you have any questions or want to get in touch with me, all of my previous shows get uploaded to YouTube. So if you want to see my pretty face on YouTube, just Google the Dave Mierswa Show, and this show will be uploaded probably next couple of days. And then also, if you got a smartphone or tablet, you can go to law540.com, law540.com. All my previous shows are there as well. So this is the end of the Dave Mierswa Show. Once again, this hour just flies by. I'll be back next Sunday, God willing, and I'm going to have more updates on 2016 politics, and I will talk to you next Sunday at 12 noon. Take care of yourself and your family.